stream, free live stream to talk about the 10 commandments of dating. So just going to give a few minutes and let people join in. So if you're seeing this, we'd love it if you would drop a comment and just say hi. Obviously, it's me here, Dr. Chloe Carmichael. You're on my live stream. You could be seeing this on Facebook. You could be seeing this on YouTube, Twitter, LinkedIn. We're live everywhere today. And when I say we, I mean myself and my wonderful assistant, Maura. Say hi, Maura.
Hi, everyone.
So Maura's helping out a lot here today. She's going to be helping out with the tech side, and she's also going to be taking all of your comments that you're going to be hopefully leaving, because I want this to feel a little bit more like a conversation where I'm going to be going through the 10 commandments of dating. But if you have any challenges or any questions or comments or anything at all, we do want this to feel like a dialogue. So by all means, chat your questions, chat your comments. And then Maura here is going to be responding and also, even jumping in and interrupting me if she feels like there's some stuff that we should just talk about, right? And just take a sidebar. Also, good news, in case you have not read Dr. Chloe's 10 Commandments of Dating, it is actually on a special right now for free on Amazon, which is awesome. We decided to make it free all the way through, I think, Valentine's Day, Maura. Is that right? Yes. Oh, right. Sorry, Maura. We actually can't hear you.
Sorry about that. Yes,
Oh.
It will be live through Valentine's Day, and I'm going to drop the Amazon link in the comments so y'all can click whenever you want.
Awesome. Yep. And then we also have a free Facebook group where we, talk about the 10 commandments of dating. And we also have a free book discussion coming up with one of the therapists in my office. So if Maura, if you're able to share any links where people can sign up for those more free stuff, that would be awesome. So, yeah, I see we've got a few more people starting to join in. And, I just want to say again that we're encouraging people to just jump in and share if they have ideas or questions or anything about the 10 Commandments of Dating. So without further ado, I'll just go ahead and start with Rule 1. So Rule 1, briefly done. One of the things that I found in my experience working with dating clients is that they tend to go on these marathon dates that last, for several hours and sometimes even longer. If it feels like a really good date, it's like they just don't want it to end and they feel like they're really bonding, and maybe they're afraid that if they don't take this one opportunity when things are really working to kind of cement the connection, maybe it'll just evaporate, I guess, and it will fizzle away. Or maybe they've just had a stressful week and it just feels so good to be out with somebody having a good time and they don't want it to end. So they just keep the first date going. So, hey, everybody, I see we've got some more people joining, which is awesome. Just saying again, I'm going to be going through these 10 commandments of dating. And if you have any questions or buts, like if you tried a rule and maybe it didn't quite work for you, or if you tried it and it did work, that's awesome. Share with us either way. We want it to feel like a conversation. So I was saying with Rule 1, briefly done, what we want to do is actually try to limit our first dates so that they're no more than maybe 60 to 90 minutes max. And the reason for that is because those of us who are dating for a partner are looking for somebody that also has the organizational skills and the kind of consistent, reliable personality skills that if they do go on a date and it is a lot of fun, they actually will, that will carry through for them, that the next day they'll organize themselves and want to see you again and do all of the things that we would, of course, expect would be happening after a good first date, but that surprisingly sometimes do not, right? So, and we've all had the experience before of even, being on a date and having a great time in the moment, but then for whatever reason later, just not really feeling like seeing the person again for whatever reason. So before you might find yourself on the receiving end of that disappointment, it's just so much easier if you end your first dates after 60 to 90 minutes. Not bad to leave yourself wanting more or even leave them wanting more. Leave a little bit of something to discover next time. So it makes me so happy. I see we've got some more people jumping in, and I just want to remind everyone that Maura here is watching all the comments. We're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. We're going live simultaneously. So if you have comments or things that you want to share, go ahead and chat them, and Maura will relay them into me. And Maura has also shared some links where you can get the dating book for free for the next couple days. And we have a free dating discussion group. I really want to just engage with people about this material, and what better way to do it than free and live. So here we are. So rule number 2, numbers for you. And what rule number 2, numbers for you, is all about is having a little bit of consistency in the number of first dates that you're going on. I was working with a lot of clients that seem to kind of go on like a yo-yo diet of dating, where, maybe they would sign up for the apps and they would be going on like 6 or 8 first dates in a week. And then all of a sudden they would just feel like, oh my gosh, I've had enough of that. And then they just wouldn't date again for a month or two because they would feel so burnt out. So what I would suggest people do instead is just stick with a target number, like maybe 2 or 3 dates a week or whatever's right for you based on your dating goals. And then just always stick with that number so that you're never burning yourself out with a whole bunch of dates, but you're also making sure that it's on your radar and you're never, just forgetting about it because it's been a busy week or something like that. Similarly, you can also do numbers for you, rule 2, numbers for you, with the amount of time that you spend on the dating apps, because that's another thing that I know a lot of people have is, when they first sign up, like they'll spend hours on it, or maybe they're just kind of bored or lonely at one particular point, and so they're on the app all the time, and it almost starts to take on a negative feeling. And then as soon as they find something else going on in their life, they're like, oh, thank God I'm off that app. That was so much. And so instead of going in that yo-yo space again, where you're just almost overdoing it and binging on the dating app and then not wanting to be on it at all, is you just limit yourself. A popular amount of time is 15 minutes a day for many people. That's enough time to make sure that they're present, they're checking messages, they're returning stuff, but they're also not trying to like cure their need for social connection through the dating app, which can be tempting sometimes. But we have to remember that that's actually really not the best use of the dating app. So we want to make sure just about 15 minutes a day is usually a good number. So rule number 3, diversity. And, although I'm all for dating a diverse group of people or whatever's best for you, rule 3, diversity, is actually not about specifically dating a diverse group of people. It's actually about making sure that you're using a diverse group of sources to find your dates. So if you just have a particular type or demographic that's, that you're going for, that's fine. But I would like to see you using more than one source. I mean, assuming if you're not totally satisfied with your dating life. If you're totally satisfied, then probably you don't need to change a thing. But if you feel like, maybe you're not 100% satisfied with your dating life, you might want to try using a more diverse set of sources for your dates. And some people say, like, well, Chloe, I don't want to pay for like 2 or 3 different dating apps, or, and I kind of remind them, we're talking about finding your future life partner, right? Think of all the money that we spend on something like going to college or our graduate school. We spend so much money, right? Those of us who are still dealing with student loan bills, can certainly attest to that, right? And finding our life partner in many ways is like the most important legal contract you'll ever sign. And so to say that you don't want to, invest in spending, $15 a month or whatever, to add another dating app or two to your profile of options, I think is maybe doing yourself a disservice. Like if you were looking for a job, for example, would you just like post your resume and look for jobs on monster.com and then just be done with it? No, you would also look at LinkedIn, you would also look at Indeed, you would hit all the places because finding a job is important and you'd want to make sure you are really checking out all the options. Same thing I would say should go for you with your dating life. So I really wouldn't skimp too much or worry too much about adding in a couple of options. I also think of dating as a little bit of a supply and demand issue. Since you're the supply and there's only one of you, the more places we can get active that are going to be creating a demand for you. So that means a few additional dating apps, maybe, or other ways that you might want to find dates, whether that be, singles, clubs. I know with COVID and everything, that's a lot harder right now. So I think apps are really probably now more than ever the primary place where people are dating. But we just want to make sure that you're trying a few different types. I mean, people have such different experiences, maybe on Bumble versus Hinge versus Match versus eHarmony. There's so many different options out there. Also, a lot of them will have, like I think Match for a while had a thing where if you did it for 6 months and you still weren't in a relationship, they would give you your next 6 months free or something like that. But I would really try to not let, what's really the nominal amount of money that dating apps charge to be a barrier between, you and being on at least two or three different apps. If you're not totally satisfied with your dating life and you might want some more. Speaking of more, rule number 4, search for more, is the idea that when you do meet someone really great, this might surprise you, but generally speaking, I would suggest that you go ahead and try to meet more people, right? Because there's almost a tendency that when we meet someone that we really like, we have a tendency to not want to go out with other people anymore because we're so excited about that one person. But the truth is, really, until you've gone out with somebody like at least 4 times, you don't really know them much at all, right? Like the first date, as I said, I've known so many people that have had really amazing first dates and then they like never talk to the person again or whatever. So the first date is almost like a pass. Like you really don't know the person after that first date. The second date, you're maybe getting to know each other a little bit from a psychology perspective. You're starting to establish at least a pattern and a frequency of contact that's at least more than one. And then once you get up into date 3 or 4, at least you can really feel like you know the person. But after the first date or two, I would really challenge the idea that you actually know the person well enough to think that, you want to just start closing off your interest in dating other people. I can understand not really wanting to go out with other people when you just have a big crush on somebody, but I would encourage you to just do it anyway. It keeps you balanced. It keeps you from getting over focused on that one person that you really barely even know yet. So, one way that we can keep our minds on track is by keeping our behaviors on track. A lot of times, the mind will actually follow what we're doing in behavior. So if you feel like your mind is getting really focused on somebody that you actually really just met, you might want to make sure that you do the behaviors of at least going out with a few other people as you're still waiting to get to know that person a little bit more. So, Maura, I'm curious, I want to encourage people again to go ahead and share. Like, are you guys trying this stuff? Is it working for you? What are some of the challenges?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm seeing some comments come in, and I just want to also encourage. I'm here, I'm looking. So when you're putting them in, they're not going into the void. I will relay them to Dr. Chloe, of course. I have Amanda on one of these platforms asking, kind of in the pandemic, it's hard to, it seems like she's saying it's hard to kind of use, you were saying using, not using dating apps to kind of fill the social connection. But when a lot of what we're doing is virtual, it seems like Amanda's struggling with getting into conversations on dating platforms that don't really go anywhere because there are so many things to consider when dating now with the pandemic and keeping safety and everything like that. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, so a few thoughts about that. So one thing is I discourage people from having too much like messaging back and forth on those apps. It's like just like we can't really get to know people through text messages. We're not really there for a pen pal relationship. So I do think it's really good to, be friendly, be upbeat, be responsive, but don't feel a big burden to like keep the conversation going by like asking a bunch of questions and stuff like that. This is especially true for women that are interested in a relationship dynamic where the man is going to pursue them. I'm not trying to make any moral argument about whether that should or shouldn't be the way relationships work. But in my experience as a psychologist, having worked with I don't know, probably 1,000 women at least, the pattern I've seen is that many of them really want a man that's going to, come and pursue them. And so, especially if that's your situation, I would not want you to feel like it's going to be productive for you, to feel like you have to keep up a bunch of big banter and questions and things over text on a dating app. You can be friendly and upbeat, and you can even say things like, if your answers are short and he comments like, gee, your answers seem kind of short, you can just write back with a friendly comment like, I'm actually much more bubbly in person, or I'm much more talkative in person, like with a little smiley face. And hopefully that could kind of stimulate him to be like, oh yeah, that's like the point here, is like we're supposed to, be meeting in person. And then more to the point that Amanda had then about like, well, in COVID, we're trying to deal with safety. Like, how do we navigate with all of that? It's actually kind of like, in a weird way, a gift. And I will admit, I'm almost a militant optimist sometimes. So I can almost like force to try to find a silver lining in anything. But I really do think we kind of have one a little bit here, because prior to COVID, you really couldn't say to somebody, well, before I'm going to like put on a nice outfit, or, pay for dinner or whatever it is, I'd really like to do a 10-minute phone screen or video screen with you first, right? Like, that would have come across as so obnoxious. But now that we're in COVID, people actually think it's pretty normal. And although it's not the same, it's not as enjoyable as being on an actual date. The positive side is that you get to do a little bit of a screen first. You get to kind of see how the person actually looks and sounds, live on video. And then if that goes well, then it makes sense to go ahead and meet. And so that way you're certainly working on keeping yourself safe, because you're at least, meeting people and having a little bit of a screen first. But you're actually using your time a lot better too. I'm really into time management. And with rule number 2, numbers for you, suppose that you want to make sure that you're like contacting and having like 6 dates a week or something. I would say that those 10-minute little Zoom screens do count. And it would be so hard to do that many, if you were having to run all over town and meet all those people. But being able to just do it over Zoom, is not a bad thing, especially if you kind of define it that way from the start. If you even just say, like, hey, I'm not really into like trying to have a big video relationship, but in light of the pandemic, do you think it would make sense if we maybe just meet for 10 minutes first and say hi, and then we can go from there? Because that way, what you're also doing is you're kind of programming a time limit on that Zoom date. So you're just saying from the start, it's just going to be like a little 10-minute hello. And that way there's no pressure to feel like you're supposed to keep up a long, video conversation with anyone. So that was rule number 4, to search for more. And more, by all means, like, feel free to just jump in if more comments come in. But in the meantime, I'm just going to jump on then to rule 5, remember to strive. And before I say that though about rule 5, remember to strive, I also want to say a little bit of a caveat, right? Which is that although the book is called Dr. Chloe's 10 Commandments of Dating, and it is free right now on Amazon. So if you want to go ahead and pick it up and leave me a great review, I'd really appreciate it. But although it's called Dr. Chloe's 10 Commandments of Dating, they're really just guidelines. I totally understand that every person is different. There's going to be, quote, rules that maybe don't actually really work for you. And we've all known people that broke all the rules, and then their dating life just worked out great and they met their spouse that way. So I certainly don't deny that. These collections of, rules or guidelines that I have here are just things that I've seen on the general trend line tend to help people to not get their hearts broken. That's really kind of why I wrote this book. It's Dr. Clay's 10 Commandments of Dating: How to Stop Getting Hurt, Put Yourself Out There, and Find a Relationship That Lasts. Because I saw so many just really heartfelt people that really wanted to be in a good relationship, and they were good quality people. And their problem was that they were assuming that everybody else out there was as good and sweet and true and reliable as they were. And they would feel that way after maybe going on a first date or two with somebody and having a really great connection with them, before they actually really took the trouble to put up some boundaries and some safeguards before they really opened up their heart. And so they were opening up their hearts too soon, and they were getting hurt. And the more they got hurt, the more jaded they got. They started getting anxiety about dating. And I would tell them, I don't blame you, because I think your anxiety about dating is because there's a part of you that's aware that you don't really have good boundaries yet. And you're just going to walk right out there into the dating world and have that, kind of same heartbreak situation happen again. So to solve the anxiety, we worked on boundaries, right? So that's what a lot of the book is actually about, is about boundaries. But those are, as I was saying, they're really suggestions and guidelines. If you have another thing that's working for you, 100% great. In fact, I hope you'll share it in the chat box, and Maura will go ahead and, share the comments as well. So if you have questions or different viewpoints, I'm always happy to learn. I learn a lot, from listening to my audience as well. And if you have questions about what I'm saying, I'm happy to share as well about what I know. So rule number 5, remember to strive. What that means is, this might not sound super romantic, but it basically means we have to date kind of whether or not we feel like it. Especially if, maybe you're at a certain age where you're saying, gee, I'd really like to make sure that I have a partner by a certain age because I want to have kids by a certain age, or I want to make sure I find a partner because I want to have that shared life experience with somebody. I want to have a continuity of stories and life that I have with somebody, and I'm eager to find the right person. In that situation, then you have to really date whether or not you feel like it. So a lot of people will maybe go to their best friend's wedding. They'll get like on a big dating kick because they, get focused on relationships. And then maybe a month later, they're having a really fulfilling period in work. Their social life is really wonderful. Some great family stuff is going on. And they're like, yeah, you know what? I just don't even feel that focused on dating. I'm just doing other stuff in my life. And I'm like, well, sure, that's totally fine. But you have to remember that if your life goal is actually still that you do want to have a partner, you'd be wise to just at least keep your, finger on the pulse of that a little bit, even when the rest of your life is busy. I kind of compare it to the idea that even when we're not hungry at the moment, we still go grocery shopping because we know that we'll be hungry later, right? So even if you're not particularly feeling like you're into dating at the moment, if you know that you want a life partner, you'd be wise to make sure that you still at least check the boxes of corresponding with people, going out with a few people, and just, not letting that totally fade into the background of your life until you have a sudden yearning for it. Because if you do it that way, then you're only going to be focused on dating when you're hungry, right? And we all know that being hungry is not even necessarily the best kind of energy that we want to bring into the dating world. So almost when you're not feeling super focused on dating is in a way almost the best time to make sure that you are dating. And that's why rule number 2, numbers for you, is a nice way to just keep yourself anchored so that you have a good reference point of how often you want to be dating. So Maura, how is it going in the comments? Are people sharing thoughts about this stuff? Are they trying it?
Yeah, I just want to say first, thank you for everyone who's tuning in. I'm seeing lots of DMs and comments, and it's super great to see such an awesome audience on this live stream. I got a couple of the same, so I'll kind of pose it to you, Chloe. But how do you motivate yourself and find the balance when life is, as you said, overwhelming with work, with family, with other personal relationships? It seems like people are struggling in finding the balance and being able to motivate themselves to stay consistently dating.
Mhm. Well, I mean, I think that it's more about just being motivated to stay with your plan. So even if you don't feel particularly motivated to go on a date that week, you feel motivated to stay with your plan of finding a partner. Just like even if I don't feel motivated to go to the gym on a particular day, I can at least say, well, I want to be motivated to hit my goal of going to the gym, X times a week or whatever it is. Also, if you find yourself really struggling for the motivation to date, I would be curious about, what is your dating history? Because, like I mentioned a few minutes ago, people who are going out in the dating world and getting hurt a lot, they might understandably feel a real lack of motivation and even an aversion, to getting out there and dating again, if that has always just, led to sadness or heartbreak or whatever it is. So if you're noticing that you don't have the motivation, not just because the rest of your life is really busy, but that it really feels specific to dating, I would encourage you to really think about why. And I want to remind everyone that we do have a free dating discussion group that's going to be led by a therapist in my office. So I know Maura has already added that into the comment section of all the places where we're streaming live. So another good way to just increase your motivation would be to, say join that type of dating discussion group, or my book is currently free on Amazon. It's also available on audiobook. And the reason I mention that, I do think it's relevant to motivation because listening is more passive than reading, right? It takes like a little bit more focus to like pick up a book, get it, and point your eyes at it and stay focused on it. Whereas if you just simply press play and have it on in the background as you're doing your errands, and it's this little voice, talking to you about dating tips and dating ideas, that should naturally start to increase your focus on the topic and your interest in the topic. So those would be things to help you stay motivated. And also having, like I said, manageable targets, whether it's being 15 minutes a day on the apps or 2 dates a week or those types of things. So, rule number 6, not in a blitz. We have to remember that these things take time, right? So, if we're dating for a real relationship, for a good, solid, lasting relationship, many of us even want a relationship that has the potential for marriage, which, by the way, I am a married woman. So, in case anyone's curious about that, I can understand being curious about, like, if you want to follow the dating advice of someone, who's maybe not married yet. I can see where there might be times when it's helpful to feel like you have a peer in a sense who's doing it too. I'm not dating anymore. But these are some of the, dating strategies that I used when I was single. And I do think it's important to know rule 6, not in a blitz, means that this is going to be probably a long haul process, right? And I actually mean that as a compliment to you. Because if you're listening to this, if you're thinking about this, if you're putting this much effort, and I applaud you, you're being this thoughtful and reflective about your goal of finding a good partner, you're probably a very emotionally intelligent, driven, relationship focused person who is looking for someone who's going to be at that level right there with you. And that is going to, by definition, make the pool of people that qualify a little bit smaller. And so that means it may take a little bit longer. Just like, for example, very specialized executives take longer when they need to find a new job. It takes a specialized executive longer to find a job than it takes somebody who is not in any kind of a specialized field. They can just walk into, any place and get any kind of a basic job because they don't have specialized skills, and they can just pretty much get, kind of an entry level job anywhere. But the very specialized executives take much longer to find the right fit because they are very specialized and they're looking for a place that's really going to work for all of the special gifts and talents they have, and that's going to give them the high compensation that they want. And so, in a similar sense, those of us who are dating, I mean, certainly, again, not us meaning me, like I'm married, but those of you who are dating, looking for a really high caliber relationship with a really special, high quality person, you have to understand it could take a while. So, if I were you, I might think like at least 6 months, okay? Like at least. And that's why, again, I love rule 2 numbers for you, of just knowing that all you have to do is hit your numbers. So even if it's been 3 months, 4 months, whatever, and you're saying, oh, I'm still not finding anybody, please don't get discouraged. I would just want to completely normalize that for you. And what you are doing in the meantime is you're building your dating skills, you're learning a lot about yourself. I would encourage you to also be keeping a dating log. So, in the dating log, what you do is you have a notebook, and at the top of each page, you write the person's name. So each person gets one page, even if they've only ever had one date and you're never going out with them again, they still just get a page. So every time you have a date with somebody new, you write their name at the top of the page. And then in the margin on the first line, you write the date of the date. And then you just write a couple lines, like maybe where you went, how the date, went, who arranged the date, if they followed up, to plan the next date before that date was concluded, and maybe any like physical activity that happened during the date. And that's all you write. It's just a log. And then the next time they contact you, you add that into the log. And every time you go out with them, you just add another log. And what that lets you do over time is you can start seeing an overview like, oh, yeah, this person was like really into me at first. And they were like, almost like bombarding me all the time. And now they're really starting to fade away. I wonder what that's about. And the nice thing again about the log is that it removes just kind of your mood factor. Like if you're just having an insecure day and you're like, oh my gosh, this person hasn't contacted me and it's been 4 days since our last date, you can actually just look over the dating log and see like, oh, actually, that's quite normal. Like this happens with them all the time. I shouldn't worry about this at all. And then another nice thing about keeping your dating logs over time, as I was saying for Rule 6, not in a blitz, is that over several months of doing that, you'll be able to start really noticing your dating patterns. Like you might notice, gee, I tend to go out with people, and the people I get most excited about at the first date tend to be the people that are actually we're fizzling out by date 3. And the people that I always think are really boring at first, those seem to be the people that just, kind of keep sticking around, and it's like more of a slow build on the interest. And so by keeping that dating log as you work on Rule 6, not in a blitz, you'll gain a lot of information and insight about yourself. So don't think that you're just wasting your time during all those months when you're going out with people that aren't the one. You're still learning a lot about yourself and your patterns. So Rule 7, hold for heaven. This is the sex one. And what I want to say about this is that it is truly not a moral judgment. Like people can really do whatever they want. The reason that I suggest that people should hold off on having sex until they are exclusive and they know why they're exclusive, and we'll get into that later, is because I personally have worked with so many people, and it's usually women, just because of biology, that when a woman has sex, her body releases oxytocin, which is the same hormone that we release when we are breastfeeding a baby. It's a mother nature hormone that promotes bonding so that the mother will bond with the baby. When she lactates, she releases oxytocin. Same thing when she has sex, she releases oxytocin. So whoever she's looking at, she's going to be bonding with that person almost whether she wants to or not. And kind of like, it's almost like, I'm tempted to make a vulgar gesture, like, thanks, Mother Nature. But like, if it's good sex, you'll release more oxytocin, right? And so, as we all know, just because you're having great sex with someone doesn't even necessarily mean that that person's like, uniquely qualified or especially going to be great relationship material. So, for all of these reasons, is why I suggest it's better to not have sex until you are in a committed monogamous relationship, because otherwise you're going to end up really bonding with the person before it's really appropriate. And that feels kind of like a one down position, right? In a relationship, to feel like you're just more bonded to them than they are to you. Whereas for women, again, that's just kind of like what your body will often do. Now, if you're a woman whose body doesn't do that, whatever, it's totally fine. I'm just talking about general trends that I see as a psychologist. And this is, of course, backed up in science as well, that women tend to get more bonded that way. Now, the one caveat I would say, though, is that it is also important to know why he wants to be exclusive. So if you're, got a date and you've been dating a little while and he wants to have sex, and you say like, sorry, but I don't really, want to go there until I feel more like I understand, where we are, like in terms of commitment. And I, just don't really want to do that until I feel like I'm in an exclusive relationship, but I, like you, but I'm just not sure it's the right time. And he says, oh, great. Let's be exclusive then. So many women will just be like, oh, great. I'm so glad you want that too. I'm your girlfriend and you're my boyfriend and we're monogamous and that's it. And they feel like, great, we had that conversation. sorry, but what I would encourage you to say is, okay, that's great. I'm really glad that you know, are interested in being exclusive with me. Like it's something I've thought about with you too. But before I would want to really go there, I would want to understand a little bit more, like what's the reason for the exclusivity? Because many people, they become exclusive and it's basically like going steady in high school, right? Like they just want to be able to have monogamous sex. They want to be able to have security about their Saturday night date. They like the social identity of, you know, having a partner, but they have no real interest in having a relationship that could be turning into an engagement, you know, in 5 years. Maybe they have no interest in having kids or getting married, and maybe you don't either, right? And so if those things don't matter to you, then it probably is fine. If all you are really looking for is just monogamous sex, then fine. When the person says, let's be exclusive, great, done for you. But if you're actually hoping that the exclusivity is kind of a prelude and you're in a future oriented relationship mentality, I would encourage you to ask the question like, yeah, well, that's certainly an interest of mine as well, but I'm curious, like, what does that mean for you? You know, where, like, what's the purpose of exclusivity? Where would you see the relationship going if that, you know, exclusivity worked out? And if the person is unable or unwilling to articulate anything beyond that, if they're just like totally confused, and you say, well, I mean, because for me, I'm like more of a future oriented relationship type person. I have goals in my life. I'm, you know, especially for those women who are like, you know, getting close to 30. You know, there's always egg freezing too, which is awesome. I actually froze my eggs and never regretted it. I wrote a whole blog about it. It gives us a lot of options. But I also found that, you know, when I was 30, and still single because I broke off an engagement when I was 29. So then there I was 30 and single. And it was almost liberating that I could then say to men who wanted to be exclusive with me, I could just say to them, you know, I really do like you, but me being 30, I can't really just be exclusive without understanding why. Like, where do you see, you know, this going if it works out? Is it just kind of like going steady? Or is there a future orientation to it? And if that question scares the person away, then you didn't fail, you won. Because you got rid of somebody that really doesn't share your relationship goals. Sometimes women are also afraid that that's going to seem desperate, but I would actually reframe it that it's the opposite of desperate. It's actually you being discerning. It's you saying, I'm really not sure I want to be exclusive, until you can really make the case to me, like as to why, like what are you actually really looking for? And then I might agree to it. But if not, then I think I probably better keep dating, right? So I don't think it's desperate at all if we think of it that way, that it can actually be more on the discerning side. So, Maura, I'm curious, like, how is this going? How are people reacting to this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a super interesting conversation that we're getting into, and I'm happy to see that we still have lots of people tuned in and engaging. And I've gotten, one kind of interesting question that I want to throw at you is, what are your tips? And this is, I think, kind of going back a commandment or two. But what are your tips for dating profile success? So I think the person is asking, how do you set up a dating profile to best reflect personal values, personal self in a engaging way?
Yeah, that's such a good question. Well, I think that it's always helpful to have a couple of friends like help you with it, right? Because a lot of us don't really want to like brag about ourselves, or there's certain things about ourselves that we don't even really notice as special because we just live them all the time. So I've definitely known clients that have traded for writing each other their, you know, dating profiles. And so that can be fun. I would encourage people to keep the profiles, you know, kind of short and upbeat, but also don't hide the ball, right? Like if you're looking for a serious relationship, say so, you know, and if that means you're going to get fewer inbounds because certain people are scared of that, great. You know, you're saving yourself a lot of time. But that's a great question, and I would go totally more into that. But I see we only have 5 more minutes, so I better do rules 8, 9, and 10. So, rule 8: don't take the bait. So, rule 8: don't take the bait means just because you go out with somebody who says like, Oh, yeah, I've always seen myself wanting to get married and have a great relationship like my parents one day, or, just because they introduce you to their family, don't think that that means anything, okay? Like, I have had so many women in my office that have, and again, for whatever reason, it's usually women, sometimes it's men, but it's usually women that just kind of assumed that because a man was talking about these things like in a someday basis, that this is what he sees himself doing someday, or introducing her to their families and things, that this kind of like means that we're serious. It doesn't. Okay. It doesn't mean that until he specifically asks you to be exclusive and specifically explains that he could see himself getting married to you one day, right? Unless he's really specifically saying that, it could be a little bit of a bait and switch, right? Where he kind of talks about serious stuff and, alludes to like an interest in serious stuff, but he's not really at a point of readiness to execute on all that big talk, right? So, rule 8, don't take the bait. Rule number 9, control your mind, is one of my favorites. So, in this one, we think about like many of us, if we have a really great, amazing date and we have this like super hot makeout session, or we just had an amazing, magical evening, we'll just want to sit and replay the moment over and over and over again in our minds. Or if we're thinking like, gee, I don't want to contact him too much, so I'll just like replay some of my favorite moments from the date and kind of satisfy my urge to be with him just mentally without actually, reaching out to him. The reason why this is a mistake is because there's a part of your brain that registers that as if you're actually doing it. And then that part of your brain is increasing your sense of closeness with that person, as if you've had a greater frequency of contact with that person, as if your duration of contact with that person has been greater, as if the proportion of time spent with that person has all been so incredibly positive. And you might say, like, oh, well, I'm just daydreaming. I totally know that. Yes, you do, but on a certain level, you don't. That's why, for example, if you watch a video of a roller coaster with a camera in the front car, your stomach will actually kind of drop when the roller coaster goes down. That's because your body, and your brain is part of your body, on a certain level kind of just sees stuff and takes it on a certain level as reality. So, rule 9, control your mind, means that it's really not necessarily in your own best interests to sit and like fantasize about that person all the time. Rule 10, find your zen, is just about saying, you can kind of let it go, you can stay relaxed. And I know that sounds easier said than done. But if you follow rules 1 through 9, rule 10 will be so much easier. Now, I know we're coming towards the end, so I just want to remind everybody that we do have a free Facebook group as well about this, where you can just kind of talk more about this. We also have a free discussion group that's going to be led by a therapist in my office. And Dr. Chloe's 10 Commandments of Dating is free on Amazon for just a very limited time. I think maybe for the next day or two or something like that. And as a little ask I have, if you do check out the book and if you do like it, also I have the dating video on Amazon, which you can watch for free through Prime. If you do watch that stuff and you like it, I would really appreciate a good review on Amazon. That kind of stuff really helps me a lot. I'm a new author and a small business person. And so any of that type of interest or affirmation helps me a lot. Just as a disclaimer, though, if you're a current or former patient at my office, that little request does not apply to you. I totally understand for reasons of confidentiality or whatever reason, certain people may not want to post about that. But if you don't have any issues about it, it would be really helpful to me. So I wish I could stay, but I do have an 11:45, and I know that this is scheduled to end at 11:45. So I just want to thank everybody so much for joining in. And if there's unanswered comments, I'm going to make sure I go through later and answer the comments. So thanks so much, everybody.